Thank you for joining us today to celebrate the life of my dad, Jim Hilkemeyer. First, some logistics. I know you've been here a little while, but in case you don't know, there are 2 bathrooms, one back here, one around the corner over there. There will be some wonderful food after the speakers, so stay for that and take a look at all the memories and mementos that you have made and missed. I also wanted to mention that I will be the MC for this event. My brother and sisters, however, have done the heavy lifting in preparation, and I wanted to thank them for that. Thank you. These events, whether you call them memorials or funerals or celebrations, are never easy. But I thought to myself, well, at least Dad blessed us with good material to work with. This good material strikes me in 2 ways that I think will be demonstrated by the people speaking here today. First, the obvious good material that you chuckled at was his stories and anecdotes and jokes. That's the standard stuff that writers or comedians refer to when building the basis of their work. And Dad had a lot of stories. But the other good material he left was the imprints on the lives of everyone he touched. For example, I want to share something that one of my lifelong friends told me, and I hope he doesn't mind, but I thought it was very on point if you listen really carefully to what he said. He said, "I have fond memories of our soccer games and looking over at the sidelines, and your dad was always there, seeming like an oak tree, towering over all the other parents, especially your mom. As a kid, he was the tallest, broadest shouldered, sturdiest looking dad that I knew. And I always felt if we ever got into an all-out brawl with that other team and parents, we would prevail because we had your dad." Of course, there were never any brawls, but that quote is still important to me. So, as I said, today my role will be to move us through the good material and the people speaking here. And we will start off with my uncle, Stan. Woo!
Good afternoon, everyone. I think I know just about everybody here, but if there's someone out there that I don't, I'm the little younger brother. I was the 10 years younger than Jim, and I have 4 sisters and 2 older brothers, Jim and Ken. And so my perspective of Jim is going to be much different than you of older, friends who grew up with him, or even his children. They've got a different, approach. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the things he did in his work life, because a lot of those things kind of fell my way. And one of the things I always think about with Jim was he was a trailblazer. And from my perspective, he carved a path in my world that created multiple careers for me. My first one was working for Mr. Murphy, and this was a hand-me-down job from Jim, who passed it down to Ken, who passed it down to me. And that was parking cars at U of A football games. And on a good night, we could park like 36 cars, and we'd pocket $4.50 by the time the night was done. Second job that Jim forged for us was working at the Prince Drive-In Theater. And my brother Ken, my sister Lois, Glinda, and then finally me. I know that Glinda and Lois spent a lot of money that they earned at the Prince on Capizios at college level. But anyway, after the Prince Drive-In Theater, Cactus Corp decided to basically build this super slide on Alvernon. The story goes that nobody did the math to figure out that every man, woman, child in Tucson would have to ride the slide 10 times to break even. So I got moved from the Prince Drive-In Theater to the Super Slide, where I could work in the cafeteria or the concession snack bar because I had experience from the Prince Drive-In as well as play on the slide. Then they had this crazy idea about opening a pie shop. So as in the other situations, it was kind of like, let Mikey do it. So I was recruited to be a dishwasher, and because of my good work ethic that I had established, and became a coveted dishwasher, and then a kitchen helper, and then a baker. And later in life, I actually acquired Phoebe's Pie Shop and basically ran it into the ground. After the pie shop experience, about that time, Dave Lovett and Jim and Bill Kimball had started Copy Boy, and they had just started franchising, and they sold me 25% interest in a store on the east side of town. And that was my introduction into Copy Boy, which I spent about 25 years in that business. When I sold Copy Boy, then I moved on to another area that Jim had forged, and that was working with Sports Parks of America and some of their expansion around the country. Jim was very active in that, and it was a great idea if you didn't have to work with governments. That was my lesson learned from that experience. You're better off not partnering with government entities. But anyway, so back to Jim's world rather than just Jim's influence on my world. Think of all the different things that he did in his life, starting out as a paper boy. Then I think from there he went and worked as a stocker at Safeway. This was when he was about 16 years old. After that, I know he got a job at Arizona Bank that my father chastised him for leaving that job. And he then was manager of the Prince Drive-In Theater while he was finishing his college and starting to raise a family. From there, he went to the office at Cactus Corporation and helped them through all sorts of different ventures. But in that career, they had done lots of different things. And I'll just read a few of those items that he was involved with Bill Kimball. Where's Bill? Bill and Jim were magicians, believe it or not, and they might have even gotten paid a few times for putting on a magic show. And that was in your late teens, early 20s? Late teens? Late teens. Okay. Jim was a farmer. They had land out in Agua Valley through Cactus, and they grew beans and cotton and wheat, and eventually sold it to the city of Tucson for the water rights. That was the first purchase the city made to acquire groundwater. He was a rancher. They had cattle operations with partners in outside of Guaymas that they would travel back and forth to Mexico, and that was probably where part of his love for Mexico came from. He was a miner. They had a silver mine in the mountains outside of Tucson. That was a little bit more Wes Becker Sr.'s pet project. He was a realtor later in life. Early part of his life, he was an accountant. He was a builder and developer. He built and operated sports complexes in the Southwest. He built and ran some athletic clubs, multiple bowling centers that Terry Lee can attest to. He drew the plans up for him. And then he even built and ran a roller skating rink. And the amazing thing he'd always told me about roller skating rinks was, if you charge $1 for them to get in, 50 cents goes for your insurance policy, because somebody's always getting hurt. When I think of some basic characteristics of my brother, definitely a family man, and you can tell by this group and his family, and we all know the different members of the family, but he had an uncanny ability of starting traditions. And I started to sneak away from those after he had so many accumulated that you couldn't figure out what to do at any time because there was always some traditional event coming along. He worked very, very hard. He was very smart. One of the smarter people I know. And he had an ability, I would almost think that he came up with the concept of thinking outside the box. He probably was thinking outside the box before we knew what was in the box, but always had an approach that was different or looked at both sides of the situation. He was honest, not greedy in any activities. He was just honest and fair. He would have been a great judge. And then giving. He did lots and lots of different charity events and charity things over the course of his life, but I'm not going to get into that. I was more wanting to talk about his work career. I guess, you could say that some of the things he did on the side, like developing a diet and health plan called Equilibrium that some of you may know of. In his early days, he had managed the Intruders, which turned into the dearly beloved Terry Leach Band, and got them as far as maybe Hollywood, California. Just an interesting guy who kept busy and was not afraid of a challenge. Always was willing to take on the challenge, and maybe not so much even worried about money as much as, let's see if we can do this. Anyway, my brother was a great guy, just a great all-around guy.
Amen.
And we'll celebrate his day today, and I think maybe later we might even get a shot.
Thank you, Stan. Up next, we've got a few of my dad's longest, oldest friends, and Bill, Dave, you guys.
Good afternoon. I always called him James. That's how he was introduced in first grade, and I just didn't have any reason to change it. Our little group here has been together for a long, long time, but from where I stand now, it's gone by very quickly. From 1st through 8th grade, high school we were together, and we went to college. At the U of A, we all pledged the same fraternity. We've been together a long, long time. We played together, we prayed together, we partied together. We even went into an array of businesses and worked together. Pretty much what we did was work James' mantra of life: to work hard, to play hard, and to pray hard. But it was always James that we looked to for guidance. It was always James that had the idea. He drew people to him like nobody else. It was astounding how many best friends this guy had, and every one of them wishes he was still here. For years, as our magic team, the Wonderful Wizards, although we started as something else, we would swap the emails we'd get, the things on TV, the things on the internet, these magic tricks that were done. We'd swap them back and forth. We didn't so much look at it to figure out how they were done. We just looked at them, relaxed, and were absolutely stupefied by what this new breed of magician is able to do now. Last week, a friend of mine sent me one of these, and without thinking, I turned around to send it to James. And I thought, oh boy, do I miss him. And I sent it anyway. And I'm pretty sure that he got it. Not only did he get it, but from where he stands now, looking down on us, he probably knew how it was done. He's been with me there every day since he passed. We've made so many memories together. There were so many stories and so many laugh until it hurts reminiscences that I know that James is still here with us and will remain with us. Ben? That's great, thank you. Jim the magician. I have so many great stories about Jim, his adventures, accomplishments, and ideas that I could write a book, which I really would love to do. And so please help me with your stories and your memories of Jim. What impressed me the most was his ability to bring people together and make things happen, seemingly out of thin air. It was fitting that his first business venture was as a magician with Bill. He had a magic touch and could easily conjure up ideas and turn them into reality. He was a leader in many ways and always knew what to do. He helped others to succeed as well. A great example of that was the event that he and Francie organized for our 25th and 50th year class reunion from 8th grade. Now, my siblings also attended St. Ambrose, so I asked them if their graduation class ever had a reunion. And they said no, it was simply unheard of. High school reunion maybe, but not 8th grade. Yet nearly everyone in our class of 50 showed up for both. No one but Jim could perform that kind of magic. In fact, a lot of those people are here now. He lived in a world of ideas, from the wonderful wizards, Adventure, Moxies, Phoebes, Cowboy, sports parks, summer wine, equilibrium, and the Hilky Way. And he even wrote a docudrama about Tucson called Presidio. Some of them worked and some didn't, but they were all magical. Thank you.
You know, it's hard to say enough about a person who is such a major player in all of our lives. And with us, that begins in first grade and on through today. We were all doing things together, always planning different entrepreneurial type ventures. Ben listed some, and Stan listed almost all of them. A few more, which was mentioned, was Terry Lee and his great band, the Dearly Beloveds. And after high school, Jim and I headed up to Western Oregon to pitch peas, which will be included as a great story in Ben's book. Jim was best man in Gail and my wedding and godfather to our first daughter, Lucinda. We started Moxie's, Tucson's first teenage nightclub. Together, we tried to resurrect Phoebe's Pie Shop. And of course, we started Copy Boy with Bill at the helm and Ben designing the logo. As Bill said, we were always together. Jim was the initiator, very bright and wise, ahead of his time, and as others have and will mention, so much more. Jim was always there for his family and for anyone else who happened to drop by for a rum and coke, and most importantly, for his great advice. Some of which, no doubt, Heidi, Eric, Kristen, and Garrett also received, maybe requested, and probably not. We're all better because of you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, guys. Next, my sister Kristen will do a scripture reading and say a few words.
A reading from the book of Ecclesiastes. There's an appointed time for everything, and a time for every affair under the heavens. a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot the plant, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to be far from embraces, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What advantage has the worker from his toil? I have considered the task which God has appointed for men to be busied about. He has made everything appropriate to its time and has put the timeless into their hearts, without men's ever discovering from beginning to end the work which God has done. Yesterday, my siblings and our children gathered for the rite of committal and interment of Mom and Dad's ashes in a companion grave at All Faiths Cemetery. It's out Old Spanish Trail in the desert, a perfect place. Their grave site is the farthest southwest corner of the new quadrant of the St. Francis Urn Garden. It's marked by a temporary marker right now if anyone wants to visit it, but in a month or two there will be a permanent gravestone there. Thank you. Rest in peace.
Eric, you're up. My brother, Eric, and I see the length of that paper, 8 to 10 minutes. There. Hopefully I can go fast. Dad. Closer. My dad does a lot of things. And as we mentioned before, one of those things was a storyteller. I am not. So while there's a lot to say, maybe this will be shorter than he was doing. But along the way, I will likely mention stories to retell, ask about, or reminisce on later. One of his stories, maybe it's right there, involves a friend mentioning, Jim can do anything, but the problem is he tries to. But when I look at how he spent his days, a few trends come out. These show his passions. Entrepreneurship, family, fun, sports, travel, music, and a little religion. And how he combined them as he lived. First, I think Stan covered most of this, so I won't go into his work. I'll just point out a few things about how he combined his passions. He had the motto of work hard, play hard, pray hard, which is on the other tables. But these weren't separate things for him. He combined them and did them all at once, combining his passion for work, entrepreneurship, sports, recreation, and travel. Of course, those things lead to lots of stories about roller rinks, water parks, silver mines, water coolers, large grass, messy shapes. The list goes on. Overall in business, he would say he won some, he lost some, he had many adventures along the way, and he enjoyed every one. While he had a passion for work, he also had a passion for vacation. He loved to travel. And somehow it felt like we did a fair amount of it. The Gulf of California, aka Kino Bay, was likely his favorite spot to go. He and his brothers have more than a few stories about Mexico. The trimaran stories are a few of my favorites. And Kino was a tradition, I think that was mentioned earlier too. A place for family vacations. Ranches, pink bikini, polar bear swims, sand castles, golf tournaments, jigsaw puzzles, and music. It's a place of fun, rest, relaxation for him. And my dad used transitions to ingrain what was important for him into his life and kids and grandkids. Camping was another tradition set to let him drive and get out to nature. He really liked to
Drive, which allowed us, maybe forced us, to visit the entire western U.S. Moab, Utah, Durango, Colorado, the American River, California, West Philly, Missouri, the Dakotas, Yellowstone, Santa Barbara, all over. We knew we were on for an adventure when we were told that we were going to take the long path today. Sunset Magazine was key reading material on the table next to his, where he sat at midnight, along with a lot of other books he read a lot, and maybe a nice bird. Maybe the most important trips that he took were to the Garlands at Oak Creek with the bridge group in Francie every year. She was extremely important to him. And he loved her till the very end. I think their 50-year marriage was a badge of honor for them. They were lucky to have each other, and 3 kids and grandkids. We're lucky to have them both. The travel in general was a passion for Jim, but he always came home to Tucson. He had a huge passion for the city. Its sunsets, its hot August nights, the monsoons, the rincons, the Catalinas, and the wildcats. He loved Tucson so much and knew his history so well. Of course, always a storyteller, he was working on a book. Specifically in Tucson, the Tanque Verde area was important. He combined his passions for his family, Tanque Verde community, and sports into how he supported the local children's youth sports. He was president of many of the local sports leagues for all of us to play in. He coached, he sponsored, heck he, and of course we then, built the field we played on. Work hard, play hard. It was a great in everything. He valued the work ethic, even in having fun. He did it all so we could play, and perhaps find our passion. Softball, baseball, soccer, basketball, even sheep aquatics. Yes, there's a story there. You can see, he believed in helping people help themselves. And while he did what he did for Tanque Verde sports was important to me, so I'm talking about it, it's just a single story related to our family. But every person, from his friends in grade school, or early adult life like the Schneiders or the McLaughlins, or later the Tanque Verde area like the Shapiros, every person who needed kids seemed quick to relate what he had done for them that changed their life. Whether through advice, connections, an opportunity, information, Jim's influence stretched across many generations, covering diverse demographics. Again, even closer to home, his traditions defined what was important with our family, especially the holidays. The tradition of sending out interesting Christmas cards is one that still lives on in my family. Another is the gathering of the larger family and friends for feasts of astronomic and gastronomic proportions, with a little chair ball sometime during the day. It was work to pull it all off. Work hard, play hard, play hard. It's just how we did it. Again, fun, food, religion, family, sports, all combined. He tried to do it all. 2 other holiday traditions also come to mind. Easter, where the tradition was for the kids and grandkids to sing Mass. And Father's Day, which of course was about him. But ask his grandkids for stories about the tradition of water wars on Father's Day. Another thing that Dad did thought was important was education. He wanted the best schools possible for his kids. Tanque Verde Grade School, Salpointe High School, and sending the kids off to college. Even supporting their sports teams, even if they weren't the U of A. Maybe most importantly though, was his School of Hard Knocks, which there's proof that he's the dean of somewhere. All of these things extended to his grandkids too. When the grandkids were young, you could count on him to give them the law, but I don't think he ever changed a diaper. As they grew, he read to them or told them his favorite stories, taught them how to enjoy the outdoor with gardening and the Santa train, the love of sports, puzzles, and games. I'm sure he shared his wisdom with them too. I'm not sure how he could get tidy to the house right behind them. But I know he enjoyed having the family, especially some of the grandkids so close to them. So close they could just walk up and play a game to the hedging path. These were things that were important to him. Time with family and friends, helping someone out, doing something new, having fun and working hard, education and being smart, making and telling stories. My dad was a wishful thinker, an idealist who often thought the odds were a little more in his favor, which I also think made him a bit of a visionary early in life and a bit of a wise man later in life. He enjoyed the simpler pleasures, good foods and beverages, recreation, music, family, and friends. In the spirit of this, there will be some bourbon passed around for a toast in a little bit while Terry will sing. Make sure you listen to their song. In the end, Dad enjoyed the adventure of life with no regrets. He did it the healthy way, and I think he left the world a better place.
Like Eric said, Terry as well will be doing a bit of a medley. And while they're doing that, the bourbon will be passed. Obviously, hold that until they're done and we'll give him a proper toast.
Hi, everybody. We're Terry and Lil. I just have to tell you a little bit about this. In 1964, I put together a band in Tucson, and the drummer said, "Hey, my brother works at the Prince Drive-In. Maybe you should go over there and see if you guys can play during intermission." Because nobody else would hear us. I mean, we were playing kitchens maybe in a few places. So we went over there, and I met Jim. And he said, "Oh, what a marvelous idea." And he set us up while they were serving the pizza and the Coke and the hot dogs and the popcorn. We set up in front of the snack bar and we played, and people seemed to like it. Who else but Jim would employ a band in 1964 at the Prince Drive-In? Well, as my life progressed, Jim was always there. He was there for me when I went to school. He found a sort of make-work job for me, so we got paid $200 a month to keep our heads above water. As soon as I got my architectural license, he was the first guy to give me a commission. And we were together through this, my whole career. There's no place in my life that I can't look back and see a direct line that goes back to Jim. Every single step of the way. And about, 6 months ago, a year ago, I put together a long email to him and I said, "Look, Jim, look at all these linkages. Everything in my life I can trace back to your involvement in it." I said, I don't know how to give you thanks for that. You know what Jim said? This is Jim Hilkemeyer. "Well, yeah, but you gave me a lot to work with." Selfless, always selfless. Thank you, Jim. So we got a little song here. Lil and I started off playing rock and roll years ago, and more or less we've transmuted into doing Christian music.
We switch sides.
So we've got a little medley here that'll kind of do both ends here. There are places I remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone and some remain. All these places have their moments with people and friends I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living in my life. I love them all. But of all these friends and loved ones, There is no one compares with you, and these memories lose their meaning when I think of love as something new. Though I know I'll never ever lose affection for people and friends that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them, but in my life I loved you more. Soon we'll come to the end of life's journey, and perhaps we'll never meet anymore, till we gather in heaven's bright city, far away on that beautiful shore.
Yes, we'll never meet again this side of heaven, so we'll struggle through this world and its strife, 'cause there's another meeting place somewhere in heaven, by the beautiful river of life,
Where the charming roses bloom forever. Separations come no more. We will never meet again this side of heaven, but I will meet you on that beautiful shore.
love you guys.
Looks like the food is just about set up as well, so after we're done here, go grab some food, take them around. Thank you, Terry, as well. And with that, I simply ask you to raise your glass of his bourbon and honor the man who taught us to work hard, play hard, pray hard. To Jim, to James, to Dad, to G-Pup, to Jimmy. Work hard, play hard, pray hard. Yeah, I should have mentioned, keep your glasses, drain it, and keep your glasses. And there are more on the bar, or will be. Okay. Thank you everybody for coming.